Okay, so in this presentation, I'm going to explain who we are, what our project is, what we did, our preliminary results, and what's in the future. There'll be time, like Khiah said, there'll be time to ask questions at the end, or you can put them in the chat, or you can raise your Zoom hand if you have any questions. So, as you already know, AIRA stands for Artificial Intelligence and the Rights of Autistic People. So it's a project that EUCAP commenced at the beginning of the year, and it's funded by the European Artificial Intelligence Society. The project consists of a literature review, which I'm going to talk about, which is current artificial intelligence research in the autism community, and a survey of autistic people that will be the basis for advocacy training. So, the literature review. So in January, we started the literature review into the use of artificial intelligence in regards to autistic people. As you can guess, it's a vast topic, and it took a lot to sift through. So there's some background information. As you probably already know, artificial intelligence is everywhere, and there's probably no one here that hasn't used AI in some form, such as Siri or Alexa or even Google. You can't get away from AI, and there's like ChatGPT, which is helpful sometimes for people. So furthermore, AI is becoming increasingly prominent within the autism research, and we all believe strongly that autistic people and the autistic community must be at the heart of the research, especially as AI usage within autism has already begun and autistic people are at risk of being left behind if we don't step in soon. So these are our keyword searches. It's kind of boring, but I thought they were interesting. So we decided to include as many forms we could think of for autism. So that's why we chose Asperger's, mainly because we weren't sure how researchers would write about us. So I'm also autistic. So that's why that was included. And we had many different forms of what AI was for the same reason. We weren't sure what we would find. So we split our library. We found 1,074 articles, and we split them into 4 libraries, depending on what they were. Diagnosis is, well, obviously it's about using machine learning to diagnose autistic people. Intervention is included articles about therapies and technologies used for the use of autistic people. Biomedicine includes articles about genetics, biomarkers, and anatomical differences between autistic and non-autistic people. And the other folder mainly contained articles about communication and ethics. So the slide shows how many articles were in each library, and as you can see, diagnosis was overwhelmingly the most. This graph shows how many articles each year from 2010 to 2022. From 2014, there's a huge upward curve in the use of AI. And as you can see, diagnosis is the most, and we're up here. We didn't include for 2023 because it would skew the graph as the year isn't over yet. So what we found in our diagnosis library was a significant portion of the literature concerns diagnosis and machine learning. So the way it works is the algorithm analyzes behavioral, biological, and medical data to identify risk factors and indicators to identify autism. However, this is mainly using feedback from clinicians to design the algorithm, and a diagnostic tool used with very little input from autistic people themselves. And obviously biomarkers, there isn't an actual biomarker for autism, and a lot of autistic people don't want there to be found one. So how effective can this be? Intervention. So what we find in our preliminary results is that AI-assisted interventions usually include robot-assisted therapies, wearable technology, and AI-assisted mobile applications. Very few of these interventions involve autistic people themselves, which is concerning. These interventions mainly perpetrate autism stereotypes and are based on behavioral interventions such as ABA. However, mobile technology is the most promising of these interventions if the technology is developed with the autistic community. So biomedicine. So this is a folder I don't understand completely myself. We have someone on our team that's really good at this stuff, but she couldn't make it today. So the current biomedical research mainly explores the use of AI in identification of biomarkers and the discovery of brain pathologies associated with autism, which isn't great. And a considerable amount of research is dedicated to developing AI algorithms that can analyze neuroimaging, genetic and epigenetic data to identify potential biomarkers and genetic variants. In our other folder was a library that contains a vast amount of information, all different from each other. So I'm only going to mention like one interesting thing that I found, because we found like quite a lot of interesting things, and then I can talk about those later if you'd like me to. So for one, we found that AI has the potential to aid autism research by enabling the easy sharing, editing, and uploading of a vast amount of data that like one person or a few people can't reasonably do. And so they can share at national and international levels, which is like amazing. Like people can't do that on their own, well, not without vast amounts of time. So this could facilitate information transfer within the autistic community and be beneficial to autism advocacy groups. And so what is next? Right now we have a focus group opportunity. So that's what we're looking for our survey. We're not sure what autistic people want from AI. So before we conduct a survey, we would like to conduct a focus group. It's just a small group of people to find out what people are interested about AI, what they know about AI, what they'd like to know about AI. So if you're interested, that is something that you could potentially be part of. And I could put the link in the chat later on if anyone is interested. And anyway, that's the preliminary results very quickly, but I'd love questions because I could talk about that all day. Does anyone have any questions?
At this point, I believe people may need to think about this for a moment. Yes, to most of us, it is an unfamiliar subject. It takes us a while to begin to formulate our questions. So while people are considering that, I would like to ask Dr. Aviva Cohen to talk about her work. And everyone, please feel free also to type questions in the chat and we'll take them later.
Thank you. If it's okay with you, I'm going to share a PowerPoint presentation. A couple of people who may have seen this before, but I felt it was easiest just to start from the beginning and explain everything. But I have included a slightly different video, so it wouldn't be too boring. So just to give you a little bit of background on what I'm going to discuss, the idea for this project came out of a postdoctoral research fellowship. I was asked to address the question of future planning. How do we help people to plan for the future of people with complex needs? And this was particularly personal subject because at the time my late husband was living with us. He had a stroke which rendered him nonverbal, severely cognitively impaired and paralyzed on one side. So that was why I started researching this area in 2006. So the app that I'd like to talk about today, and there's lots of things coming out of that, other research that I'm happy to discuss also, but this is called Empathic. So one of the biggest problems in future planning, and a problem I experienced at home, is the difficulty of entrusting care to somebody else because the feeling is no one else will understand him or her, because they can't communicate for themselves. So how can I pass on care? So as the years went on, and this was repeated over and over to me, I came up with the idea of using artificial intelligence to understand the emotion in verbal communications for people who cannot use functional speech. So the app is called Empathic because it interprets emotions. And the easiest way to give you a brief overview is to show you a short video. After the video, then I'll go through it in a little bit more detail. So the idea is the care provider or family member or support person has an app on any kind of smartphone. They hit a button as the nonverbal person is articulating in their own way, And the app will give you 1 of 10 emotions. And we're building upon that, but at the moment it can interpret 10 emotions. So I'll play this short video. Please tell me if you can hear the music.
Use Empathic API and mobile app to understand
Yes, we
how
can
a
hear that.
nonverbal person feels by recording their vocalizations. It can interpret up to 10 emotions, so everyone has the opportunity to independently express their feelings. Using the app couldn't be easier. Simply record as the person vocalizes. You can stop manually or wait for 10 seconds. Artificial intelligence will interpret the communication and tell you how that person is feeling. You can train Empathic for each individual. Just accept, reject, or edit the interpretation. To customize the app, select the emoji that best represents the emotion being expressed. You can also review your recordings. You can share a version of Empathic with others. Our companion feature allows you to add up to 20 users without charge. Companion users are typically care providers, family, or friends who don't always understand the nonverbal person. Empathic helps you to understand someone with speech difficulties. It offers that person the opportunity to communicate independently.
So I think the last time we spoke, maybe we hadn't already launched the app, but we have now launched it into the app stores and it's available and it's live. It's only been out for a couple of weeks. And so one of the things I was very insistent on, even though we have investment from Enterprise Ireland, we also, our angel investor is the former chair of our National Health Service called Frank Dolphin. And even though they're sort of driven by financial interest as well as humanitarian interest, I was insistent that it had to be at a cost that was affordable by families at home. So this, although is a commercial enterprise, in its ethical approach, it's also a social enterprise, following on from other social enterprises I had created. And the screens here show you the process is very simple. It's really made for people like me before I started. I had never downloaded an app before Steve got sick, and I had no idea how to use technology. And it's for people like us, ordinary people who are not great at technology, but just need something to put on your phone so you can understand someone you live with. And you literally hit a big blue button in the middle that says record. Then the artificial intelligence analyzes the sound waves, comes up with the interpretation. And if you're the primary carer, the account holder, you can then say, yes, I accept, that's the correct interpretation. Or no, I'm going to make the artificial intelligence more accurate. I'm going to train it by selecting one of these emotions. Sometimes when somebody's articulating, they're not trying to tell you they're angry or happy. They're saying, I'm hungry, or I'm thirsty, or I want something. That is the something else button. And as we get more and more data, we'll be able to add an extra screen, we hope, that will indicate other states in addition to the emotions that we have presented here. The companion users, the idea is that the primary caregiver usually doesn't need to use Empathic. After living with somebody, you already know what their sounds mean, you understand their body language, you understand so much about them, but there are other people in your lives. There are, you know, the daycare or respite or family members who come in while you go out to do the shopping, or care providers. They don't understand. So that's why included in Empathic is 20 companion users that you can share Empathic with without charge. They don't get to train the artificial intelligence. They only get to have a button that says check emotion, check again. That's it. The other thing we added, because it was requested by so many of the people who participated in helping us to design and develop this, is a screen that has a list of pre-recordings, so that if you have recorded somebody already and a new person comes in, you can say, this is how he or she feels when they're happy, angry, anxious, upset, so that you can educate people to understand the nonverbal person. And that, again, everything here is based on my family, which was, everything we did was to try and help Steve to live as independently as he possibly could, to communicate for himself, by himself. He got very upset when people spoke over him, about him, as if he wasn't in the room. So the motivation behind this is that the nonverbal person can use some sound to express themselves and to be understood by others. And that will support communication and help to overcome the social isolation that can be so problematic. Over 2 years of testing, we found that the feedback has been that people are less inclined to have challenging behaviors, less inclined to do things like try and stand up out of a wheelchair and fall. Staff who are testing this have encountered fewer problems and are more likely to stay, better communication, and so on. The other thing is, when I finished my postdoctoral research fellowship, I also spent a year as the deputy director of a department of inclusive design. I did my postdoc in a department of inclusive design. So everything you see has been designed with people, where I was working with people who couldn't communicate in a way I could understand. We invited support people to help them to communicate their ideas to us as well. And we have been testing with so many people, and every time I show this slide, it's actually wrong because more people have joined. We now are testing in Portugal as well, and that continues. We are moving towards also an API, which can be integrated into smart sensors. It can be used for larger service providers so that you can maybe include it in sensory rooms and that sort of thing to work out if somebody is actually happy in the care of someone who's looking after them, so that again, you can monitor their vocalizations to know if what is happening around them is what they want. And as I said, we're supported. We have an amazing support from Enterprise Ireland and from Frank Dolphin. This is my amazing team. I could talk for a very long time about each and every one of them, but they are incredibly talented, and we are a diverse team in every sense. Thank you. I'll stop sharing now. And I'm happy to discuss any part of this.
Thank you very much. And we contacted you originally because this seemed like something that would definitely concern parts of the autism spectrum. Not all, but those who have very limited or no verbal expression at all, and we are of course all very aware of bad conditions in the institutions and the challenges of staff changing and so on, and autistic people with their rather idiosyncratic expression often being misinterpreted. So I think we all see a lot of potential for something positive. Well, many people may also have questions and wonder, like, does it work as well as intended? Now, does anyone have questions at this point? Then first, I'd like to pick up from the chat channel. People asked about the focus group. So in case some haven't noticed that written communication, Khiah, maybe you could explain a little bit more about how the focus groups are going to work.
Okay, so the focus group is going to be completely online. I've put a link to the expression of interest in the chat. It's at 6 p.m. Central European Standard Time, and on Thursday the 18th, or it's on the 18th, I'm not sure if it is a Thursday, I can't remember. And it's going to be very small, about 6 people, 7 people, and we'll send the questions out beforehand if you're chosen, and we're trying to make it as diverse as possible. So that's why it's an expression of interest and not an application form, in case the people, so we can choose the people that we want. And it's very much focused on what people want from AI, what they think about AI. Do they want nothing to do with AI? And it's all about autistic people's views on that. So it's quite exciting because I've never done a focus group. So it'll be interesting to see everyone, and I'm hosting it. I will be hosting it with one other person, and we've got a 4-person team. So there is Imka, Haigo, and also Kat. And no, you don't have to have your cameras on. You don't even have to have your microphone on. You can type it into the chat.
And it's also really important to be aware that basically anyone interested in the topic is very welcome to apply. It's just we have to keep the group quite small in order to kind of enable kind of vivid discussion, and so that everyone really is making a contribution. And so if you're kind of not selected to be part of the focus group, that doesn't mean anything about you basically, or about competence or anything. But it's about just that we want to have a good mix, kind of like different backgrounds. Yeah, so please do apply if you're interested in the topic at all.
And I understand these focus groups are meant to help you to create the survey.
Yes, so we have a
survey questions.
We have the survey coming out soon, but we don't know what to put in the survey yet because we don't know what autistic people want from AI. So the focus group will help us find out the questions that we can ask and questions that we shouldn't ask, and areas that are open for discussion, really. If we get enough people, the more focus groups, the better. The more diverse voices that we have, the better. So if there is a lot of people, then we'll definitely consider more focus groups. In fact, the amount of people that we have so far, we would definitely have to consider whether or not we would want to do another focus group. And I'm sure that my team would also agree that having the most people possible, like being able to hear their voices, is the best situation.
So the way it's applied, we have to be really, really careful about it, because where I see really see danger is that it's, or at least where I'm concerned, is that it might actually sort of strengthen sort of the biomedical model, and in a way sort of also in terms of diagnosis, because it in a way it suggests a kind of objectivity which isn't necessarily there, and also kind of if you, the algorithms are programmed by people who have kind of some ideas about autism, and then this can kind of in a way create a dynamic which then might also be kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So in a way, sort of the whole way autism is interpreted and constructed in a way, it's bound to become more conservative with its potential. And I think we really have to be very, very careful about this. And I think what is important is nowadays it's often seen as a development which is going to be to happen anyway, basically in every field of society, and probably it is for economic reasons, sort of importantly, but for other concerns as well. So I think what is important is to include the community in sort of basically for every step, and sort of not just autistic programmers, but really people who are in the field, and find a way ways to include their voices. And I think that's really important.
And just following on that question, I'm wondering, Kayla, did you look at the assumptions behind the AI models? Are they using what assumptions are they basing their algorithms on?
So at this stage in our preliminary report, we haven't looked behind the algorithms yet. Mainly, although we did find with a lot of the research that it wasn't specific. They were training on large volumes of data, and the large volumes of data tended to be autistic people, because there is large data banks of autistic data, and which they might not realize their data has been used to train machine learning. So that's something that we really need to look at. But no, it's just really preliminary results that we have right now, and nothing concrete on that.
I'd be interested to see if there are any biases built into the initial assumptions behind the way they're training the AI.
I think there definitely will be, because they're mainly using the biomedical model of disability, which already comes with biases. But I don't want to be biased in saying that it definitely will have, because we haven't checked completely.
What we hear kind of in the broader disability scene when these matters are discussed is that AI is going to amplify injustices and oppression, that is going to remove human decision making and make it kind of invisible, like who is making decisions and where. And often, yes, the quality of the data that the decisions are based on may be quite uncertain. And to kind of make that more concrete, if we think of Aviva, your app, a kind of the fine-tuning of it obviously depends on the person who makes that choice, who gives the further training to the AI. Does that person really understand the emotional states and the needs of the person they are observing?
So when we were developing this over the first couple of years, we made sure that every single person who was training the AI had a one-to-one meeting with me. And we asked them to, first of all, to read an easy read document with the nonverbal person, but then also to check every interpretation with the nonverbal person. Is like, this says you're feeling happy. Are you feeling happy? And the feedback was very interesting. Some people who had never tried to communicate in a functional way before started trying to make more functional communications. Their family felt, because they were being listened to in a very careful and specific way. So I would always say, someone may not appear to have a capacity, but you can't assume that. Always check everything with them. So insofar as we could, we included the nonverbal person in the confirmation stage. We do include those documents on our website, but that's why we split it between companion users who don't get to train the AI and the account holder, who we are assuming, and it is an assumption, is somebody who will know that person better.
Yeah. And I assume the kind of ultimate test will be the observations of quality of life, and they know whether there are fewer escalations and less need for restraint and less need for medication in residential services and so on.
Absolutely. And we still have a closed testing group running at the same time where we can compare feedback.
Okay. Imke, go ahead.
Yeah, just a thought on your project, which I think is fascinating, but I think it's sort of where there is, it would be really important not to have general assumptions on body language, but really start from the person. And in a way that has to be done very, very kind of like carefully and slowly as well. So I'm really interested in what sort of how the project will develop and what comes out of it. But it's a good example for if it's one, how AI can help to kind of improve independence and sort of self-efficacy for people who are kind of severely challenged physically. So I think that is that is really important.
So just to address that, so we're measuring only sound waves. We're not looking at any physical attributes at all. But We have started with a lot of research on acoustic sounds from acoustic sound waves from people with different kinds of complex needs. And what we found, and it's very interesting, is that people with very severe autism, people with severe cerebral palsy, people with severe brain injury, the emotional expressions are actually the same. So when somebody is anxious, their anxious sound is the same, no matter what the cause of them being nonverbal. So that's where we've started with this. But you're right, we want, I mean, inclusive design is all about, this is one person and that one person matters. Let's take what we learned from them and express that through what we do. And we're very aware of that in everything we do. And as the next phase of development then is that at the moment when you train the artificial intelligence, it is trained in general, but then we are moving also towards a very personalized model where you will be able to train it for each individual as well. So we're doing everything we can, and we're constantly talking about including the nonverbal person, because that's what it's all about. I mean, that person has to be respected and included.
Yes, and I think there's an issue here that's also very important, which is about every similar technological application. People need to understand the limits, know what it is for exactly, and not try to over-apply or over-interpret. I must say that most of us know from EUCAP, we were originally a little bit skeptical. We were like, is someone really trying to come up with an application that reads emotions? Because that field generally is really, really problematic. We find this is something that taps into universal similarities in the vocalizations of people who have no language, who have no spoken, written, typed, or signed language. And as Aviva told us, it doesn't work with somebody who does have language. So it shouldn't be even attempted. Others, maybe other applications for AAC will happen for people with different challenges. Yeah. Okay, Khiah, please.
Hi everyone, really nice to hear your discussions and the lectures. My name is Khiah Nouri and I work at the European Disability Forum as AI Policy Officer, and it was actually not planned that I would come here, but I just decided to come and see how it is. And I just wanted to say that, or I just wanted to contribute a little bit of like one or two thoughts to your very interesting discussion, because I'm actually very interested in following like what will happen with your project and what results you will have. It's just that right now in the European Disability Forum, we're very busy with working with lobbying on the AI Act that is currently being negotiated. So that's why I'm so happy to see that you're working on the advocacy part and like this. And just one thing that I wanted to reflect on is that, as you say, that the technology can both be used to really enhance and make the situation better, but also especially if systems are designed by someone who doesn't have a disability and they're used in a situation you cannot control. Let's say the police decided to use some sort of facial recognition and maybe analyze if you're a threat. Then I've seen research saying that people who I think myself as an example, I actually have ADHD, so like I am a bit motorically overactive when I get excited or stressed, and that could maybe be flagged as suspicious behavior. Or if you're speaking sign language, you do a lot of facial expressions, part of the grammar, which has also been considered to be interpreted as aggressive. So it really depends on the design, and that we maybe have to just be a bit critical of what is it used for. Like as a personal assistance device, as you're saying, maybe is a good idea, but for control, we don't have so many good experiences from that, in my opinion, and it seems like you're also going in thinking about that. So it's really, I look forward to like keep this discussion and hear what you, from your perspective of this. Just wanted to say hi and tell you this little brief. Yeah.
Good to have you here. And with regard to the AI Act, we're kind of behind. We are just gradually getting to the point where we will be able to signal the autistic view somehow, but we will need to get through these focus groups and the survey and everything to really properly formulate our views and then get into more the advocacy part of it. I have another question for our team, but also others who might be familiar with the topic. Does anyone see any positive possibilities in wearable technologies for autism? Yeah. And the idea has been around for a very long time, but is anyone aware of any way in which AI might make it better and more usable? Because I've never seen it become really popular.
Honestly, the literature that we've come across has not been promising. It's mainly, we found articles about shock therapy with wearable technology, which is problematic, very problematic. And I've not seen anything promising. Like,
so is the actual research to suggest that AI should be used to deliver shocks to autistic people?
Yeah, so it was like wearable, and then the information would be transported back to the person that controls the therapy, and then it would be up to them to whether or not to transport the information back, like negative feedback, and whether or not the person should act on what they were doing and what they weren't doing. So it came like as a shock, or also as a notification type thing it was meant to be, but it's like what it was like a shock.
I think that, in my view, there is some need, some expressed desire in the autistic communities to have ways to detect when we are moving towards a very negative state of mind or moving towards a meltdown or whatever. People have a need to somehow find out that they're going there before they are at the threshold of having a meltdown. So I assume that technologies that could help with that could be positive if they work in a positive way. If they replace, for example, the support dog, the natural intelligence of a dog that's able to signal to a person that you now seem anxious. So that would be a wonderful thing, because not everyone can keep a dog. But then again, this is where I see the risk of amplifying oppression, as in, instead of having people who can deliver a few hours or 10 hours or 20 hours of the message of you are doing something wrong, be different, or you are is not acceptable, to having a device that's on all the time doing the same. Signaling being visibly autistic is wrong. So I believe this is where we have a huge ethical issue and something to keep watching for years to come.
Actually, don't perceive less than kind of the average person, but actually more. And this is why, in order to make sense of the world and this function, you have to block something. And this is a little. So in a way, if you give them devices to basically cause to perceive more, then you can process. This is going to cause stress, and also in a way potentially maybe you cause kind of something like stress-related disorders such as autoimmune disorders and so in a way.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Okay. And we have used nearly an hour, so I think it's time for us to return to our holiday weekend. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, it was really interesting.